What is up, guys? This is Tom. Welcome back to another video. This is an exciting one because I have my hands on the Xiaomi 13 Pro. This is a smartphone camera that I've been thoroughly excited to test out because for the past few years, Xiaomi has had a partnership with Leica, which is obviously one of the most successful and kind of world-renowned photography brands on the planet. And most excitingly for me, they have collaborated dramatically on the software inside this phone. And I've actually found it to be extremely exciting to shoot with, and not just in the way that you might imagine. To briefly cover off the phone's hardware, what's also particularly exciting is that we are working with an equal trio lens setup. So all three of the cameras on the back of the Xiaomi 13 Pro are 50 megapixels, which is obviously very exciting. I talk about this a lot on the channel, but you want a consistent experience between all three lenses on your phone. I think particularly phones like the Samsung S23 Ultra, it is very clear that you have a slightly different experience depending on which lens you are using. So personally, I think this is a really nice move. So the primary is a 50 megapixel 1-inch sensor. There's a 23mm equivalent f1.9 aperture lens. It's an absolutely gorgeous sensor that's definitely in line with some of the leading smartphone sensors out today. The ultra-wide sensor is a 14mm equivalent f2.2 aperture lens, also a 50 megapixel sensor, which is very exciting. It's not a 1-inch sensor. They've used smaller sensors for these particular lenses, but it's fantastic to see that it is still 50 megapixels. The telephoto is a 75mm equivalent f2.0 aperture lens, but really the star of the show when it comes to this phone is the Leica software. One thing I absolutely love about using the Leica system right from the get-go is that you get presented with this choice. Do you want to use Leica authentic colors or Leica vibrant colors? And I actually wish many more smartphones would do this, and I think they should also give you different options for sharpness, and I think they should probably call that something different for other consumers that aren't photographers. I think the over sharpening is still one of the biggest issues we have on smartphone cameras. So by going, would you like your photos kind of digitally sharpened, or would you like them a little bit softer, this would be a really great choice. The Leica authentic and the Leica vibrant is a different way of doing that, and basically it's just saying, do you want your colors to really pop, or do you want them to look a little bit more subtle? Personally, I think stick on the authentic, absolutely. The vibrant is a little bit too vibrant in my opinion, and the Leica authentic is already vibrant enough. The thing which I've been enjoying most about shooting on the Xiaomi 13 Pro, however, is actually been the portrait mode section. So inside the portrait mode section on the default camera app, you get a variety of choices. It's not just standard portrait mode. They're kind of using portrait mode as like almost like a catch-all phrase, and of course if you shoot people, it will kind of snap on and shoot that slightly more traditional portrait mode experience. But I think what's particularly cool is you get different kind of lens emulation options, and this has been a very, very interesting experience to shoot with. So you get 4 choices of modes here. You get black and white, which is a 35mm focal length equivalent, and we'll talk about that slightly in a second. You get swirly bokeh, which is a 50mm focal range equivalent. You get a portrait at 75mm focal length equivalent, and you get a soft focus look at 90mm focal length equivalent. As a professional photographer, my favorite focal length is 35mm. So it's super interesting and intriguing that you have instant access to a 35mm equivalent in this black and white mode, and it is beautiful. I was thoroughly impressed the entire time shooting with this 35mm equivalent. It's actually the closest I've ever been, in my opinion, to feeling like I was shooting like almost like with a little Fuji or a Leica on a smartphone. I had a fixed focal length with like a kind of a stylized look, a 35mm look, and it removed a lot of the thinking about the different lenses to use, and I just was focusing entirely on the shooting, and it was a really fun experience. And the photos that are coming out of this mode, in this black and white mode, definitely just don't look like they were taken on a smartphone. Leica has been helping out a lot with the color science, and that definitely shows throughout this mode. I do think it has a habit of being a little bit too contrasty. Like, I don't think a lot of the clouds actually look like this in real life, even obviously in shooting in black and white. What's essentially happening here is that Leica and Xiaomi are using those 50 megapixel sensors, and because there's a ton of real estate and a ton of available data from those sensors, what they're doing is they are allowing you to crop in digitally, but using a ton of really clever software to essentially emulate different focal lengths that you don't have access to normally on the phone, but they're also really popular photography looks like, a 35mm. There's no 35mm optical focal length on this phone, what you're getting is almost like a best of both worlds out of it. And I think other smartphone manufacturers should definitely take note of this. It's a truly brilliant way to get access to more creative looks and filters. This 35mm is by far and away my favorite look out of this phone. I shot with it, I would say, like 75% of the time. I think my only biggest feedback about this is why are we restricting it to black and white? I don't think there's really any reason it needs to be black and white. I think you've created a brilliant thing here, Xiaomi and Leica. Why can't I just have a mode that actually allows me to do the same thing, but with colors, maybe a nice, really nice Leica picture profile or something like that? I think that would go down absolutely fantastically. In terms of the other modes, they weren't kind of doing it for me quite as much as that 35mm. The other portrait mode, the 75mm portrait, does look really good as well. I do think though, when you're in this realm, I would probably just shoot in the kind of standard normal portrait mode. I don't think there's really a ton of benefit to actually using the 75mm kind of portrait mode within this master lens system. I don't think I would ever use the swirly bokeh mode, a 90mm fixed focal length with some kind of really weird focus stuff going on that essentially does, don't get me wrong, it does soften it up and give you some swirl in the background, but basically the whole photo just kind of ends up looking blurry and mushy, kind of a bit weird and a bit rubbish. So I would steer clear of that. Really, the star of the show here is the 35mm focal length in that gorgeous black and white picture profile. And if Xiaomi and Leica are listening to this, please give us a version with additional colors or actual full color options. So this phone camera has been out a while, and that's why I'm not giving it a kind of a traditional like photography review or actually comparing it to some of the other smartphone cameras. I think by some basic testing, some basic shooting, these smartphone cameras on the Xiaomi 13 Pro are definitely up there with a flagship level performance camera. I think the inclusion of additional Leica features are really fantastic and give you a lot of flexibility and customization over the look and feel. It definitely feels like a bit more of a photographer's camera than a traditional normal smartphone camera, certainly for instance more than something like the iPhone 14 Pro. And speaking about the iPhone 14 Pro, the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, a lot of these kind of headline performers, I think they can definitely take stock from this amazing feature inside the Xiaomi 13 Pro. These smartphone cameras are incredibly detailed now. We saw that particularly with the Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, 200 megapixels of data. And what I think is the next level, the kind of progression for traditional smartphone photography, is that we will start seeing modes and features like this one, taking some of those 200 megapixels or some of this 50 megapixels in the case of the 13 Pro, and actually using those to create a style and substance of photography that we do not see on traditional smartphone cameras. I can see another smartphone company kind of partnering with something like Fuji and giving you proper film emulations. Imagine the S23 Ultra, 200 megapixels of gorgeous camera quality, and then allowing you to get a slight crop, 35mm crop, my personal favorite focal length, and then allowing you to apply different film emulations, which obviously Fuji has incredible film emulation functionality on that photograph. I thoroughly enjoyed using and testing the 13 Pro purely because it's kind of blown my mind as to what the next potential for smartphone photography could be. And please, Xiaomi, just give me a full color version of that 35mm lens.